I mean, one of the things
But
that
if
I think
somebody
is...
wanted to make a social music app, you could say we're going to have social music on Facebook, or you could say we're going to help Google, who's not your best friend, compete with Apple, because Apple has a pretty good music product. They're trying to make it social. But hey, if anybody, for that matter, who wanted to have a better music product could partner with you if you were in the partnering mood, or you could say, no, we're going to build our own music product. I mean, so which is it?
I mean, our default is just build an open platform, right? I mean, the stuff that we work on, like groups, location, messages, are like really core parts and either distribution channels or what we view are kind of foundational building blocks of the social graph, right?
Okay. That's a really pretty clear distinction to make.
Right, that's how we think about it, right? I mean, anything that doesn't have to be built by us, we would rather not be built by us. But anything that, just because we're a pretty small company and we have like a few hundred engineers, right? But like, I mean, I think it's small.
Yeah, it's growing. But in general, the point is that you see a fairly robust partnering strategy for Facebook as part of your future, as opposed to we're going to try to own it all.
I mean, this is one of the defining things, I think, about our strategy, but also our vision for what the web and really mobile should look like, right? Is we fundamentally are not going to build all these things ourselves. But if you're Google or you're Apple and you're like, okay, we want a music solution in our kind of ecosystem, we want a cloud music solution, or we want music on iPhone, they build those things themselves for the most part.
Or acquire them.
Our strategy, or acquire, but bring it in, right? And our view is mostly, okay, this should be more decentralized, right? Why not empower a really good entrepreneur to go build their own company, give them all the incentive around building a great company. We'll probably get a lot more innovation that way, and make it so that they can integrate social dynamics into their product extremely deeply, design it around people, not make it a traditional music application, for example, and we think it'll blow everything else out of the water.
Interesting. I am curious, as in that model, I think that you're getting to the point with Facebook, and I'm sure you feel it, where some people just don't trust you because they feel you have too much power. That you've pretty much cornered the market on the social graph. It's one ring to rule them all, and you've got the ring. And do you feel that pressure yet? Because I get the sense, I certainly feel it when I have conversations with entrepreneurs. They're like, they have to make a decision. Do I or do I not integrate with Facebook? And do you believe that there really is just one social graph? Or is there room? We have Jeff Weiner here tomorrow from LinkedIn, who believes he's got a very powerful sort of vertical social graph around with LinkedIn. And Twitter believes it has a very powerful sort of interest graph. So there are different sort of social type graphs. But, and as far as I know, you're still not integrated with Ping, right? With Apple?
I don't think yet.
Not yet. I know you guys have been having talks about that, or had talks about that. But do you feel that pressure of power?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I think you hear the criticism that you're talking about, or the sentiments that you're talking about of like, well, do we want to go all in and build a social app? But at the same time, the apps that have done the best are the ones that have gone all in, right? I mean, one of the things that's defining about the games so far on Facebook is when a lot of these companies that are building games, they go in and develop an app assuming that every single one of their users is going to be socially enabled.
Right.
Now it's through Facebook, but I think Zynga today announced that they're doing something with Yahoo, right? And I think that this kind of will spread out, and that's good. So I just think it's a different modality of thinking, right? If you go in building an app expecting that people are going to be there with their friends and expecting a social experience, then you're building a fundamentally different thing than if that's not the expectation, or if only a few % of your users are doing that. So in some ways, I actually think we're only now entering the zone where a lot of the best entrepreneurs will consider working with us, now that we've achieved the scale, and now a large enough % of their users will be using Facebook. And I mean, this is one of the things that I think is interesting with the instant personalization program that we're doing too.
Right.
Whereas now, if we'd done instant personalization a few years ago, it wouldn't have been that interesting, right? Because
it was Beacon.
because a very small,
right?
no.
I mean, it was a sort of, in a way.
I mean, instant personalization is only about sharing information that you've already said that you want to share with everyone.
Right.
But it wouldn't have been compelling a few years ago, right? Because we just didn't have the user base, right? I mean, now if 60 or 70% of any given website's users are likely to be Facebook users, a few years ago that would have been 10%. And it's like no one's going to design an app assuming that 10% of their users are going to be social. That just doesn't mean anything, right? But now you can design something assuming that the vast majority of your users will be socially enabled and just go in with a completely different mindset around how you build something.
That's true.
And I just think that that's going to get even more and more true. And in terms of the thing that you were asking about, are there going to be different graphs? That's definitely our vision. I don't think that there can ever be only one, and that's why we kind of changed some of the language around how we talked about this from the social graph to the open graph, right, at F8 this year. And the idea there was that each of these different services kind of are mapping out their own different parts of the graph. And our view is what we should be doing is trying to facilitate making these more interoperable. And it's not just all about people and social networks either, right? I mean, if you're Yelp, you have a graph of how local restaurants and businesses fit together and the reviews of them and things like that. If you are a music app, you probably have a graph of how musicians map to songs and albums and things like that. And these rich data sets being interoperable, I think, is going to be one of the really defining things that allows a lot of innovation over the next few years.
Tim opened the conference with a call for partnerships and interoperability. You've had this sort of dust up with Google over which we discussed, and you haven't quite come to terms with Apple. Sometimes the reality of P&L seems to get in the way of that vision. Do you feel like that's going to be resolved? Is that a goal of yours?
Which part?
Well,
I mean,
the people that you won't partner with.
the people, well, it's that it seems from the outside that you've said, no, we don't want to partner with you because that's a key point of control that we want to hold to ourselves.
I think that we would...
In other words, I don't want to build up an
anyone.
Apple social graph. That's threatening to my business. Right?
Oh,
they have hundreds of millions of users with hundreds of millions of credit cards, and if they get our social graph, then
I don't think we look at it that way.
You don't think about it that way.
We do have this thing where, for very large companies, we are building out, we build out tens of millions of dollars of infrastructure to support the games that are on Facebook. Right? So, and we had this thing earlier this year where we kind of sat down with Zynga and a bunch of the lead developers and said, okay, we don't have any formal relationship, but you guys are all investing a huge amount in building on top of Facebook and want more stable resources from us. We want to know that we're building out all this infrastructure for you, that's going to be stable, so we should have a relationship. And we formalized that. And I think that's been pretty healthy so far.
Right.
So that's all that we require is, for any college student or any entrepreneur who's starting something from scratch, come use our tools. We don't require any relationship.
Right.
If you're a very large company and supporting you is going to cost us tens of millions of dollars, then we want to at least have an understanding of how you're going to use what we're doing and that you're not just going to import the data, but also try to contribute back to the ecosystem and make people's Facebook experience better. And I think we're working through that to different extents with the different companies.
Right. I mean, you are working with very much larger companies. As I recall, in May at D, Steve Jobs said that the demands that Facebook made were just crazy and
only Steve gets to make those kind of demands.
Only Steve gets to make those demands. What was your response when you heard that?
It's fine. I mean, look, here's my view. I think we do a lot with Apple. So I mean, these things don't always have to start big, right? I mean, you can start small and build some great stuff. My view, as I said before, is that I think over the next 5 years, almost every major product vertical is going to get rethought to be social. Get on the bus, right? You're either going to have an incumbent who embraces this, like Apple's doing, right? And trying to push into social stuff. Into iTunes, and that'll be good. Or there will be some really creative entrepreneur with great engineers who are building and rethinking the experience from scratch. And I just think it's going to be a really exciting period to see how this plays out. Right? I think some of these are going to be incumbents that are very versatile, able to rotate their business and make things more social and designed around people. Some aren't going to be able to make it, and there's an amazing opportunity, I think, for new entrepreneurs to build new applications and rethink a lot of verticals. But I think over the next 5 years, there's going to just be this opportunity, and everyone is going to have to think about this, kind of in the same way that they are about mobile, right? I mean, you can't, like, there's no way that 5 years out or even 3 years out, any major company isn't thinking about how their products interact with phones and in a mobile environment. And I think people will get there, and they just need to, I think, take the steps that make them comfortable to understand how valuable it is and understand how to integrate it. And I don't think a slow approach is necessarily a bad one.
Right.